Hi there, and welcome to another interview. Today I have the fabulous Emily Penton, and I am going to ask her the question I ask everybody. Hi, Emily. Why did you become carnivore?
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Stephen. I appreciate it. So the reason I went to carnivore in the first place was because I had debilitating mental illness. And I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and put on a cocktail of medications, and nothing was working. At my most, I was on 900 milligrams of lithium, 80 milligrams of Prozac, 80 milligrams of Adderall just to get out of bed every day. I would take 40 milligrams in the morning and then 40 milligrams at noon just to keep my eyes open and to function. And then, of course, I had sleeping pills to sleep at night because I was all jacked up from the Adderall. And I still wasn't functioning. And at the end of 2018, it turned into rapid cycling, which bipolar disorder, you go through different cycles of mania and then depression. And then sometimes you get some normal days in between. And mine went into rapid cycling where I didn't know who I was from one day to the next. It was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I was two completely different people. Sometimes I was super sweet. Sometimes I would bite your head off. And it did not bode well for me personally and my family or for my career. And I had no idea that underlying under all of that, I had multiple sclerosis. I just knew that my body hurt everywhere. My joints hurt. I had brain fog. And I didn't know until I got diagnosed that I was actually fighting multiple sclerosis at the same time. So I actually had to quit work. I practice as a therapist. And I had to quit working for obvious reasons. It wasn't ethical for me to work when I wasn't stable, and moved in with my mom at the age of 40. And I was preparing for the worst. I was preparing to either, go into the nursing home with the MS or to go into the psych ward with the mental illness that had turned so bad. Or there were many days that I thought about just taking my life because I wasn't helping society. I wasn't helping my family. I was in the way. And so thankfully, in February of 2019, I learned about the carnivore way of eating through Amber O'Hearn's book. And I learned her story. And the fact that she resolved bipolar disorder, at that point, it was 10 years before. So now it's been like 14 years before. And it gave me hope that if this could happen for one person, maybe it could happen for me. And so I started eating overnight. I went from the standard American diet, which was cookies and donuts and cakes and sodas and all the things and chips and ramen noodles, to animal meat and animal fat. And so that was February of 2019. I had my last manic or depressive episode in April of 2019. My psychiatrist tapered me off of my psych meds. My last psych med was October of 2019. I've been completely stable ever since. And then my multiple sclerosis got to the point where I couldn't walk without an assistive device. I had a cane and I had a walker, and I had delayed and slurred speech. And my last symptom of MS was May 9th of 2019. And my last MRI showed no new MS activity. So you're not supposed to get over bipolar disorder or MS. And I've resolved both of those just eating fatty meat.
Wow. And a lump in my throat there. And to be honest, I mean, we met about 4 years ago, I think, maybe 2 years ago. Anyway, we met a few years ago, and I did not know your story. And I deliberately have kept back here because that is just heart-wrenching. MS and the mental disorder and coming off the medications, pretty categoric. I'm going to ask you a strange question here. Was there any anger that this had never been suggested before and you'd gone through this, what sounds like a hellish situation, to be honest?
Actually, no, there was immense joy. As soon as I discovered it, I didn't care that what had been hidden from me, because the answer was here. The time was now for me to heal. I didn't care. And then whenever I experienced joy for the first time, it was about the end of the fourth week, end of the third week, beginning of the fourth week, I experienced joy for the first time. And it was such a foreign emotion that I didn't even care that I had never really experienced it before. I was just happy that it was here. And now it keeps multiplying, and I don't even have a bad day now.
That is amazing. What about the doctors? What was their reaction?
My psychiatrist had the most reaction, because he watched me be crazy for 8 years. He watched me not be able to get through a session without like snot running out of my nose, crying, and like my whole life, everything is horrible. Everything was so traumatic and dramatic. And whenever I was getting through the sessions, just like stable and smiling and making eye contact, he was like, "Emily, there's light in your eyes." And I'm just like, yeah. I'm like, okay, cool, And that's whenever he was the one who said, "Let's start tapering you off of your meds." And I was like, what? No, I'm happy. Everything's fine. Let's not mess with anything. And he said, "No, you're doing so much better." He said, "Let's just take it down just a little bit." And so we just incrementally just tapered off itty bitty bits. And I was stable. I was totally fine through every transition. And I'm so thankful. I actually stayed with my psychiatrist for 2 years after he prescribed me my last med, because I just wanted to make sure that it didn't come back, and make sure, he knew what my crazy looked like. And so I wanted him to stay on board to make sure that I was okay. And finally, after 2 years, I was like, okay, all right, I know your number. I'll call you if it gets bad again. And thankfully, it just hasn't. The neurologist for my multiple sclerosis was a different experience. They were kind of bullies. They were mad at me for not taking the injections. They have disease modifying treatment. It's basically these things that you have to inject in yourself every other day. And they said that I would end up in a wheelchair and not be able to walk if I didn't do these medicines. And I had already resolved the symptoms. And so I told them, when the symptoms come back, we can talk about it. But right now I have no symptoms. I'm going to stay off of the meds. And now I do CrossFit every morning, Monday through Friday. And I'm just like, okay, I'll let you know, when I need to.
Well, that's amazing. And the yin and yang of the reaction from the healthcare providers. And the wheelchair thing, by the way, that's thrown me, because at 23, I was told I'd be in a wheelchair by the time I'm 50 for a different thing. Here I am at 58 or 59 next month, and nowhere near a wheelchair, and also experience the same sort of things you experience. Well, that's really inspirational. And I didn't realize the depth of how long you'd been having the trouble. So you mentioned 8 years with a psychiatrist. I mean, without being too personal, when did you first realize you had a mental problem then? At what age was it?
Actually, I was probably about 30, 32, 33 when I realized this isn't just the regular emotions. Like, because I thought at first, oh, well, this is just being a teenager. And then I thought, oh, well, this is just being a 20 something. This is just being in your 30s. Like, I thought this was just how you feel after you have a baby. Like, I just didn't know. And I had some failed marriages. And so everything was always circumstantial. I always thought, well, this is why I can't be stable, because this happened. And until I realize now that it doesn't matter what happens in my life, I'm stable. I still have had circumstances happen, and it's just like I'm Teflon and I'm titanium. Like everything that happens just like slides right off. And it's just like, I'm okay. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I can see that everything is going to be okay. I'm not in this like doom and gloom cloud of, misery. I have hope regardless of the circumstances.
Yes. And so many questions are coming to mind. I don't want to flush loads of questions out. Amber O'Hearn is somebody I'm trying to get on this podcast, actually, because she's great. Have you actually spoken to her, that it was her that sparked what happened to you?
We've sent messages back and forth on social media, and she was just so happy, that it could help. And then whenever the thing with the MS happened, I said to her, do you think maybe this MS has been here for a while, but when I started eating carnivore, it's like it pulled back the curtain and revealed the MS, because I didn't know when I started eating carnivore that I had MS. And she was like, yes, absolutely. I feel that it kind of like brings stuff to the surface that need to be addressed. So yeah, I mean, I've sent messages back and forth to her, thanking her, and she's always so gracious.
Yes, and she's fantastic, and I think you are out there now spreading the message. And the reason I like doing these things is because someone will listen to this and hopefully it will help them. I did an interview a few years ago with Kevin Smith about his MS, and the amount of comments and messages and the difference it made to people was amazing, because Kevin's really inspiring. And as you are, I mean, your story is remarkable. You mentioned there about a couple of failed marriages, but you do have children, and I wondered, how did the family react to what was happening? I mean, when you decided to go carnivore, were they supportive? What was that like?
Yeah, definitely. Especially with the results, because the first thing they watched was that I lost 120 pounds. And that was pretty quick. And so, but they saw that I was eating, they saw that I was eating, and I was eating this fatty meat, and I was eating a lot. And then they saw that I was stable, and that I wasn't, biting their heads off and, flipping out about things. And then they saw that I could walk. So that was pretty remarkable. And then they were like, just keep eating your steak. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. So, the evidence was just there. Yes.
And again, you've just shocked me, because I didn't see you when you had a lot of weight, so I didn't even know you'd lost that amount of weight as well. So while we're on air, I'm recording, please send me some pictures if you can, to do like a before and after, because...
Okay, yeah.
The other thing I must ask you, which is a strange question again, did you believe carnivore was going to be this good?
Did I believe carnivore was going to be this good? No, I had no point of reference at all that my bipolar disorder would be resolved, or that I didn't, once I knew I had MS, I didn't know that this would completely resolve the MS. But I had this knowing that it was not an option, that carnivore was the way for me. It was this either or. Either I go back to eating candy and cookies and everything, or I eat carnivore. It was a no-brainer. It was just like, yeah, like this is what I'm supposed to do. I have to reduce the inflammation in my body for the MS. I have to reduce the inflammation in my brain for the bipolar disorder. And this is the best way to do it. And so it was just a very obvious decision for me. I never wavered. I knew that regardless of what the results were, it was going to be better than candy and cookie and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. The reason I ask is because you still went to the psychiatrist for 2 years. And of course, I get a lot of pushback from these type of interviews from people who just don't believe it. They just don't believe that person did X, even with photographs and life stories and all that sort of stuff. And they find it so hard to believe. And I'm going to say to those skeptics, see, even Emily wasn't 100% certain. She's still stuck in with a psychiatrist because that's good practice. That's still being, sensible to make sure that you are getting the things that you want to get. But it really does transform lives. I mean, it really does. And that's the next thing I want to talk to you about, because you call yourself, quite rightly, a transformational coach. So how did that situation become you deciding to help others?
Yeah, I actually didn't mean to at all. I sent my before and after symptoms side by side, along with my before and after picture of my weight loss. I sent it to Michaela Peterson and to Sean Baker and to Amber O'Hearn. The same day, Sean Baker and Michaela Peterson posted it. And so I got inundated with all of these messages of questions. And because my heart is, as a therapist, I wanted to help. And so I just started answering the questions to my experience. And I said to everybody, I am not a professional. I'm just telling you my experience. And this is what I did. And this was my transition. And then it got to the point where I couldn't answer all the questions. I couldn't. I was up till 3:00 in the morning answering questions, and that was an imbalance. And so I had to stop. And then I started offering to help people through coaching. And that was amazing, because as a therapist, you have the client come, and then you have a talk therapy session, and they go through their problems. And then the 45 minutes is up. And then you're like, okay, I'll talk to you next week. Here's some exercises. They come back the next week. The problem's still there. It's like Groundhog Day. It's like the same problems over and over and over. And I remember as a therapist going to the other therapists saying, I feel like I'm not solving any problems. Am I doing something wrong? And they're like, no, that's just the way it is. That's what you do. And I was just like, what? Like, we need to help people. Oh, you're helping people. You're helping people. And I was like, okay. But with coaching, oh my goodness, it's like I get a front row seat to people's complete transformation, like right before my eyes. And it's so fun. It's not like Groundhog Day. It's transformation. And so I'm hooked. Like I'm just absolutely love doing this and seeing what happens whenever people can really transform their lives.
And do you find people are coming to you because they're bipolar or have MS, or do you a broader scope? Because really, I think of you as, well, like the carnivore minds. I think of you more like anything to do with cognitive function or those, emotional issues. So what is your clientele like then?
Yeah, it's really all over the board. I get people who come with trauma, childhood trauma, relational trauma, binge eating disorders, mental illness, depression, anxiety. I have had some people who have come with autoimmune disorders, and it is the main thing is that we need to get inner clarity on what they need to eat, because everybody is different. And for me to sit here and say, you need to do exactly what I did, then that is not the answer. But we can agree that the sugar and the processed foods are not helping the situation. So most of the time we just do a quick experiment at the beginning to remove the sugar and the processed foods and to find out what foods are causing them problems and what foods are not.
Yeah, and I hear you, by the way, that it's varied. But are you finding that it is mostly sort of like a ketogenic type of diet that seems to work? the best, or are there a lot of people that are doing carnivore mainly because maybe they've come to you because they know your journey? I mean, how does it pan out really?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say there's an equal amount of people who are doing keto as ones that are just doing carnivore. But fat seems to be one thing that most people with mental illness and autoimmune disease that they need to kind of keep that up pretty much. That they focus on that, I should say. And then there's times where they eat less fat. It's very cyclical. It's not a cookie cutter thing for anybody.
Yeah, it's good. That's a really good answer, because I've noticed that fat seems to be a real key player in autoimmune conditions. So I'm wondering if it's a trigger from, well, there's two things I think. This isn't about me, but I mean, you might want to put me right on this. I think it's one of two things. One is that they've restricted so much in the past. They haven't had enough fats, and therefore you've got a dysregulation that has developed because there's not the building blocks, basically. Or secondly, that you are taking out stuff. So maybe it's the addition of fat that they didn't have, or maybe it's taking out things that are quite poisonous. That is actually the magic. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's also, especially with the clients that I've had that are binge eaters, it's the satiety. You know, their body can't calm down because it's constantly feeling like it's being starved. And so if your body is constantly feeling like it's being starved, it's constantly holding on to weight and inflammation. And so then if you can satiate that and kind of turn that signaling off, like, hey, we're okay. You're going to get this fat. You're going to get everything that you need. You're going to be taken care of. Oh, it's like the body just like exhales and is like, oh, okay, you're going to take care of me. Everything's going to be all right. And then you're able to start the building. And then you're able to start to really hear those signals inside of you to know when you are hungry and when you are full and what your body feels best on.
Do you feel that a big part of your job is dealing with cravings then? Is that coming up time and time again?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for me, it was all about the fat. I mean, if I have enough fat and I'm satiated, it's like it turns off that craving mind, that I don't have to hear it constantly. Don't you want this? Don't you want this? Oh my gosh, it's been 2 hours since you've eaten. What about whenever you do eat? Why don't you eat this? And blah, blah, blah. I've got too many things to do that are exciting. I don't want to sit and think about food all day, every day. And I used to think about food constantly. I used to have a jar of peanut butter on my nightstand so that if I wake up in the middle of the night, I could eat some peanut butter and go back to sleep. Like I was constantly eating. And so now to be free of that and have that food freedom it's such a luxury.
And I think the food companies are deliberately making them hyper palatable and very desirable and actually kicking off the cravings deliberately. I think, the food scientists are doing that, and having a jar of peanut butter by your bedside would be pleasing a scientist somewhere and saying, yep, I did my job. And I'm sorry to be as blunt as that, but I do feel like that there's an ancestral disconnect between what we eat and what we're like. So it's amazing to hear such a simple thing can break such a terrible cycle. So I'm assuming you are seeing quite a lot of successes yourself. Have you got any particular big successes that you'd want to share? Somebody reversing their MS with you and those sort of things?
Yeah, I haven't specifically had anyone work with me that has reversed their MS, but they watched my videos and reversed their MS. They did it on their own. They didn't, need a coach. They just heard the message and did the work, and they just did it. I usually help people who need someone to hold their hand, and I work with the really, really, really difficult situations. Like I have one client who she did a YouTube video, so I'm not telling her news, but she was a child sex slave from the age of 5 until 14. And so the trauma that she had around that is what caused her to binge on sugar. And so she said, I need to stop. I'm killing myself with this sugar, but I'm so scared. I can't. Can you hold my hand? And so I literally held her hand through this process for her to break her addiction to sugar and processed foods. And the really cool part was that not only did she win over this addiction to sugar and processed foods, she won over her abuser. Her abuser finally had no part of abusing her, and she was free. And now she has this, she says, I have my inner clarity now. I know who I am. And that's all that matters to me.
Yeah. And that is your thing, isn't it, really? I mean, that's your Instagram label now, isn't it? In a clarity.
Yeah.
It's
yes.
Great. So anyone who wants to contact Emily, all the things are in the description, all the links, everything, and you would have seen on the screen how you want to contact her. So just a couple of quick questions. So it's a big subject, and I'm a bit choked, actually. So let's get some practicals just about you, because people are always interested. Great story and unbelievable. But just you at the moment, what's your way of eating? What does that look like? Your food frequency, for instance?
It's definitely changed over the years. I mean, it's different. And that's why I always say you have to find your inner clarity, because there is no cookie cutter way to eat, not even for me. I can't say that how I ate a year ago is how I need to eat now. How I ate a month ago is how I need to eat now. I think that every day you need to really be in tune and connected with your body to really know what that is. Now that could look like fasting. That could look like having a ribeye. That could look like I would say every other week I have a sweet potato. I notice that whenever I have white potatoes, I get depression. And so it doesn't make sense to me why white potatoes, I have depression for 24 to 48 hours after I have a white potato. But I can have a sweet potato and I'm perfectly fine. I have no adverse, reactions. Sometimes now I eat sauerkraut. Sometimes I eat yogurt now, but it's different all the time. It's not anything that is like, this is what I eat every day and this is what I don't eat every day. But I can tell you that I don't go back to the sugar and the processed foods.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of intuitive eating. Eat when you're hungry, stop when you full, listen to your body. If you feel like you don't want to eat, it's not a big deal. Your body is saying you don't want to eat, so you can fast. And I think that food freedom, which strangely enough has come up in about 5 of the last 10 interviews, is a real big thing, because people are definitely getting to the point where they don't need a prescription for the amount of times they eat or how much they eat or their macros. They just know that they look at the plate and think, yeah, that's enough for me, and I'm going to eat that. And if I need some more, I'll have some more. And if I want to finish halfway through, I'll finish halfway through. So that's amazing. I mean, this time has whizzed past, because I normally do like a 30-minute interview. So you're doing really well. It's great. It's great, actually. So how do people contact you then? What's the main way that people can get hold of you if they wanted to?
Yeah, just the emilypenton.com, and it says they are clarity call. And that's the only place I start, because I need to know if we're a good fit. And so you might talk to me and be like, no, I don't want to talk to Emily. Or, I might talk to you and be like, actually, I don't think you need my services. But then we'll know. And then we have that clarity call, and then we can decide how we're going to go forward. I have weekly group coaching, and then I have daily individual coaching.
That's great. I mean, I just think it's amazing, and you've come so far in the time when I first met you, which is amazing. So, is there anything you'd like to say? I haven't asked the right question. Is there anything else you want to add, Emily?
No, I just want everybody to know that no matter how dark it is right now, wherever you're at, you're not broken. I know it feels like you're broken. I know you can point to situations. I know you can point to circumstances and say, but this, I'm broken, I'm broken, I'm broken. You're not. You're just covered up by something. And we just need to clear that out and get to that inner clarity of where you are absolutely brilliant. Your body is brilliant. It is absolutely designed to thrive. You wouldn't be here if it wasn't. It's the survival of the fittest. You made it. You're here. And so there is something inside of your body that is still trying to thrive. And it's absolutely possible for it to. Just keep trying.
How good was that? That was fascinating. If you want to know more of the sort of sciencey, geeky stuff about health, I recommend you check out this video. This one. Just click it. You can subscribe if you want, but this video is really good.